on your back, you might want to have a couple of big sighing breaths and just let yourself settle down. So it's the end of the day, it's sort of nearly the end of the week. We might be feeling a little bit tired. So just enjoy this opportunity to settle down onto your backs, and for a moment or so do nothing and just check in with your body, check in with yourself. How are you feeling right now? So it might be there's something very obvious to you on a physical level. You might be feeling quite stiff or creaky. It might be more about your sort of energy levels. You might be feeling a little bit hyped up from work or other things, or you might be feeling a little bit weary. So it's just taking a moment or two to sort of take stock, and then we start with how we are and where we are. So the first thing you're going to do is just start to let your head roll a little bit to the right and to the left. And go easy with this. You're very much keeping within a comfortable range of movement as you let your head roll from side to side on the floor. And keep your shoulders settled down on the ground. Keep the shoulders heavy and relaxed. And 2 or 3 more times, let your head roll to the right and to the left. And feeling that you're easing out the back of your neck. And from rolling your head from side to side, then settling down with the center of the back of your head on the floor. And take a moment to let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. And then you're going to start to let your knees tilt to the right and to the left. So again, this sort of familiar movement we quite often start the class with. And as your knees tilt to the right and to the left, then just noticing how this feels in your body. So how does it feel into the hip joints? How does it feel around the back of your pelvis and into your lower back? And make sure you're doing a movement that feels easy and comfortable. So something that's helpful for your body right now. So a couple more times, let your knees tilt to the right and to the left. And then settle down in the center, and you can either keep your knees bent, or if you're more comfortable, you can lengthen your legs out on the floor. So entirely up to you what you prefer. Good. And then from there, you're going to take your arms up towards the ceiling, so over your chest, and you're going to make a big circular shape with your arms. So imagine you were holding a beach ball on your chest, and you've got your arms around the beach ball, and you're interlinking your fingers. So you've got this big circular shape you've made with your arms. Your hands are immediately above your chest, and you're going to start to rock side to side across your upper back, keeping your circle circular. Yeah, that's it. So don't let your knees rock, just let your arms rock to the right and to the left. Yeah, you might not go very far. So have a look as you're taking your arms from side to side. Is your circle still staying round? So that's it. It's not a huge movement. If your circle starts to become a bit elongated, you've gone too far. You just want to feel that the weight is rocking side to side across your upper back. So you're rocking your weight towards the back of your right shoulder and towards the back of your left shoulder. That's it. And just do this a few more times, and just keep imagining that your upper back is sort of soft and round, and you're just rocking from side to side. You might notice tension between the shoulder blades. If that's the case, you can always make the movement a bit smaller. So not feeling that you have to push anything again. Good. So maybe just once, twice more, and then let your arms come to rest. Good. And when you've brought your arms down to rest on the floor beside you, let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. And if you lengthened out your legs, now bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor again. And come back to tilting your knees to the right and to the left, just a few times to see how that feels. Very nice. So sometimes when we've worked into the tension in our upper back, then that's it, becomes a bit easier to move in the lower part of the body. Okay, maybe just once, twice more to each side with the knees. And then pause in the center, and you're going to keep your right knee bent and you're going to lengthen your left leg out on the floor. And the first thing you're going to do is just a few times tilt your right knee to the right and to the left. And see how that feels. So it's quite different when we're just tilting one knee. We feel the movement of the leg in the hip joint, and the pelvis isn't really coming along too much with the movement. Might come along a little bit, which is fine. Okay, and then settle your foot down in the center, and you're not going to let your knee tilt. What you're going to do now is that movement where as you exhale, you press down into that right foot. You send your knee forwards over your footprint and you let the right side of your pelvis come off the floor. So you're letting your pelvis tilt towards the left. That's it. And then stop pressing into your foot. Let the right side of the pelvis come back onto the floor. So repeat this a few times, pressing into your right foot, letting the right side of your pelvis come off the floor and letting your pelvis tilt to the left. So it might be that you roll a bit towards the outer edge of your left leg, yeah? So the left leg and left side of the pelvis stay on the floor, but the weight rolls a bit towards the outer edge of that leg as the weight comes to sort of the outer edge of the pelvis on the left side. Good. So just repeat this a few more times. And you can coordinate the movement with your breathing if you like. So the pressing into your foot happens as you exhale. Good. And keep thinking about sending your knee forwards over your foot rather than letting your knee wander over to the left or indeed the right. Okay, nice. Maybe do this once more and then lengthen your right leg out on the floor and just let both legs be long for a moment. And you could just lie with your legs long, you could roll your legs, or you could bounce your knees. Okay, and then let's do the other side. So leave your right leg long, that's it. Bend your left knee, stand your left foot on the floor. And do start with a little bit of letting your left knee tilt to the right and to the left. So rocking your knee out, rocking your knee in towards your long leg. That's it. Just maybe a few times, 2 or 3 times. And then settle that foot down on the floor. And you're going to do that same movement as you exhale, if you like, pressing into your left foot, letting the left side of your pelvis come off the floor, letting your pelvis tilt to the right. So you can let your right leg roll a bit, so you roll towards the outer edge of your right leg. That's it. So the pelvis lifts on the left, but not on the right, but it tilts. So it's sort of it's the sort of right side of the pelvis that's going to keep some contact with the floor. That contact will change. And just repeat this movement a few more times on this side. So this movement is really good for just getting us moving a little bit around the middle of ourselves, around our pelvis, into our lower back, into our bottom ribs. Good. Okay, make this the last time you press into your left foot. Mary, are you okay now? No. What's the matter? Sorry. Got an upset child. Go talk to Kat or ask Gemma, okay? I can't help now. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is to fold both knees into your chest. And just do a little bit of rocking from side to side, holding around the top of your knees. Good. And then you can pause in the center and you're going to just take your legs up towards the ceiling and give them a bit of a shake out. And you can add your arms in if you like. Yeah, that's very nice. And we're almost ready to come off our backs, but we're going to just do one more thing, which is, I suppose, my favorite thing at the moment, is you're going to fold your knees when you've had a shake out. You're going to fold your knees back into your chest. And then rather than holding around the top of your knees, you're going to slide your hands in sort of around the around the back of your knees. So your hands are folded in between your legs, just by the back of the knees, so that your elbows could hopefully rest down on the ground. So see if that's possible. Can you slide your hands around the back of your knees, so to be folded in between your calves and the back of your thighs, and then rest your elbows on the ground. And then just have a few quiet breaths here. And what I would like you to think about here is, as well as just feeling yourself in this position, imagining also that you're doing child pose on your back. So this pose is like child pose, but on your back. And then what I want you to imagine now is coming over into child pose on your front. And in a moment, you're going to do that, but just imagine it before you do it. And as you're imagining it, you can imagine how you're going to come over into child pose. And try and imagine going into child pose as easily as possible. And then you can come over into child pose. So from your back, think about rolling over, coming into child pose, and just settling in child pose for a couple of quiet breaths. And see how it feels to be in child pose after imagining you're in child pose. What's the problem? What's the problem? I cannot help. Go to the bedroom. I cannot help you, Gemma cannot help you. You've got to go to your bedroom. Okay, so just let's have another breath or two in child pose. And then coming up, we're going to come up into standing. So just make your way up into standing. However, that's it, however works best for you. Good. So we're going to start with a few twisty things in standing. I seem to have lost Jan, just have a very fancy, maybe it's the cover of the iPad. That's fine. So in standing, once you've arrived, we're just going to do these sort of loose, easy, oh, hello Jan, got you again. Loose, easy, swinging twists. So the first things we're doing in standing are again really just about trying to get ourselves moving, trying to release some tension, just feeling, hopefully from that, a bit happier and more comfortable in our bodies. And I was thinking as I was doing this earlier today, how some of these things where we're doing quite easy, loose movements, swinging our arms, they can just make us feel a bit happier. Good. So a couple more times, swinging your arms, feeling the whole of yourself in movement. Good. And then let that go. And settle down and now have a look at your feet and just look down at your feet, organise your feet so they're a little distance apart, sort of just below, underneath your pelvis, and they're parallel. And then what I'd like you to do is we're going to do a few twists here where we're trying not to move below the waist. So we're trying not to move the pelvis. So start by bringing your hands onto your pelvis. You might be to feel the sort of bony rim of your pelvis. So we're going to try not to move this part of ourselves. We're going to try to move above there. So now bring your hands onto your low ribs. See if you can feel your ribs. And then just try a few times turning, but from the waist up. So you're trying, that's good. Yeah, you're trying not to let your pelvis move. And it all feels a little bit strange and stuck. And perhaps not the sort of thing that cheers us up necessarily. Bring your hands onto your shoulders and carry on with that same movement. And that might feel a little bit freer, just because the shoulders can move a little bit more and our elbows can move. Good. But keep that feeling that the pelvis stays facing forwards. And then bring your fingers onto the crown of your head and keep turning. Good. Good. Very nice. Couple more times. And then let that go and come back to the first one we did, where you're swinging your arms and you're letting the whole of your body move. I've just got to turn my heating off. Good. Okay, let your feet move in this one. So good, that's nice. Okay. And then a couple more times, let the arms swing, and then we're going to let this go. And we're going to see how it feels to come down into a forward bend. We haven't really done this sort of movement apart from folding our knees into our chest. So again, feet, look down at the feet a little distance apart, feet parallel. Maybe come halfway down, so you rest your elbows on your thighs, your knees can be a little bit bent, let your head go. Let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. And if your lower back feels fine, release your arms to the ground. Let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. And just see how it feels to be in a forward bend. Remember, you can bend your knees as much as you like. And try to let your head and your arms go as much as possible and feel floppy through your upper body. Let a breath come in, and as you exhale, sink down into your heels and roll up into standing again. Good. And when you're in standing, maybe just give your feet a little bit of a shake out. And then settle your feet back down again with a little distance between them. Bring your hands into prayer pose. Just settle for a moment, let a breath come in. And then as you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Let a breath come in with your arms up. And then you're just going to swing your arms and let them cross in front of your body. So let them swing out to the sides and then cross first one arm and then the other arm on top. And just carry on for a few more times, swinging your arms. Good. And then bring your hands, let that go. Bring your hands back to prayer pose. This time we're going to swing our arms, take them up and then fold down into a forward bend. So let a breath come in as you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Let a breath come in, drop your shoulders away from your ears, and then start to bend your knees, gather your elbows in, roll down into a forward bend. Let your head go, let your arms go. Big exhalation or two. Very nice. And again, just think about how can you feel floppy here? How does your lower back feel? If it's better to bend your knees and rest your elbows on your thighs, you can do. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Lovely. Let a breath come in as you exhale, sink into your heels, roll back up into standing. Again, whenever you come back into standing, if you want to give your legs a shake out, do so, because you don't want to feel that you're just sort of rooted to the spot. That would be very nice. What we're going to do now is take our arms up and just do a bit of reaching up through one arm. Now, you don't have to have both arms up, but you could, if you prefer, reach up through one arm and let the other arm come down. Or you could have both arms up and reach up through one arm and then the other. And the thing I really like is to shift my weight into my reaching arm leg. But again, you don't have to do that. So just see if you can find a sort of reaching up that feels good for you, however you're doing it, what feels nice for your body right now. And you just think about reaching up, but without, without having to do anything in particular. Good, just perhaps a couple more times reaching up. But again, can it be as enjoyable as possible? And then from reaching up, we'll go back into a forward bend again. So exhaling all the way down. Let the head go, let the arms go. Just be very floppy for a moment. I've just got to speak to my upset child about the television. Mary, if you miss out on TV tonight, I'll make sure you have it tomorrow, okay? Just stop crying. Good. And then again, maybe have another big exhalation in your forward bend, and then sink into your heels, roll back up into standing. And this time when you arrive in standing, take your feet a little bit wider apart on your mat. So if you're facing the narrow edge of your mat, you can take your feet as wide as the narrow edge of your mat. That's the sort of distance you want. So Alison, I don't know whether you want your feet to be a little bit wider. I can't quite. Yeah, I think just don't have them falling off the edges of your mat. That's not going to be helpful. So with our feet a bit wider like this, we're going to do this one where we take one arm up and then let the bottom arm swing. So this is my sort of favourite thing in this at the moment. The bottom arm swings. And then we swap sides and we let the bottom arm swing. So again, I'm shifting my weight into my raised arm leg. And then there's something about the bottom arm swinging that just really helps to soften us a bit, I find anyway. So we'll go from side to side a few times, but this, yeah, see if having the bottom arm swinging just helps prevent you getting a bit rigid in this. That's very nice, good. Good, let's do each side once more. So we're feeling long through the side of the body, but when our arm is swinging, that's also helping to sort of, that's it, undo the shoulders a little bit. And then we're going to come into one more forward bend, but with our feet this wide apart. So keep your feet where they are. You might want to bend your knees a bit. You might want to rest your elbows on your thighs, folding forward, sinking into your heels. And just see how it feels to be in a forward bend now with the feet a bit wider apart. Again, letting your head go, letting your arms go as much as you like. If it's comfortable to release your arms down to the floor, of course, do that. And just have another breath or two in that forward bend. And then in your own time, coming back up as you exhale, sinking down into your heels, rolling up into you standing. Now, so come back so that your feet are a smaller distance apart. And you want to have a little bit of space on your mat that you can step forwards. You don't need loads. All we're going to do is step forwards with one foot like this. And then we're going to be rocking our weight forwards and back. So we want to have this sort of walking pace. If I go the other way, you can see that I've still got sideways some space between my feet. I'm not on a sort of tightrope. And both feet are pointing forward. So look down at your feet and check that your feet are pointing forward. So sometimes what happens is our back foot turns out. So see if you can get your back foot to be parallel. And then carry on with this, I always find rather soothing movement of shifting my weight into my front foot, into my back foot. So the back heel comes up and we really flex the toes. We come onto the heel of the front foot. And then eventually we're going to settle down completely in both feet. Let both feet settle on the floor, let the pelvis settle down. We're going to come back to swinging our arms and trying to not let our pelvis move. So a little bit of turning, but turning from the waist up and swinging your arms. So it's going to feel a bit fixed, but we can still let our arms be floppy. That's it. And turning. Good. And then let's come back to those movements we were doing earlier on in standing, where we, first of all, maybe we just feel where our pelvis is. And then we slide our hands up onto our low ribs. And then we want it like to turn a little bit with our hands on our low ribs. So again, we're not going very far. Well, you might need to go further than me. but your pelvis is not moving. So you're trying to feel, okay, I'm not moving my pelvis, I'm moving from the waist up. We can again then bring the hands onto the shoulders and see how is that. So trying to feel really planted through the pelvis and the legs. Keep your knees straight but not locked. Good, your fingertips could come up onto your head now, the crown of your head. So it was ribs, fingertips on the shoulders, and then fingertips on the crown of your head if you've missed any of those out. Good. And then release and just come back to twisting with your, that's it, with swinging your arms. Good. And then we're going to pause in the center and come into a forward bend with our legs in this position. So we're going to bend the front knee and then first of all come to rest on that bent front leg. So the back leg is straight at the moment, the front knee's bent. We're resting on our bent front thigh. And then we can fold a bit further down. So we let our chest come close to our bent front leg, to the thigh. Let the head go, let the arms go, and have a few breaths in this forward bend. It doesn't really matter whether your fingers reach the ground or not. See if you can sort of be floppy with your head and your arms, but feel quite planted through your legs. And then you're going to come up as you exhale, so sinking down into your footprints, coming back up into standing. We're trying to come up without a wobble, but that doesn't necessarily happen. Good. And then one more thing, so this is a little mini sequence, I suppose. Keep your feet there, bring your hands into prayer pose in front at your chest. So I'm resting my thumbs on my breastbone, my front knee's bent, and I'm going to keep it bent. So I'm going to transfer my weight into that front foot and bend my back knee. So this is as far as we're going for the moment. It's this funny sort of exaggerated cartoon runner position. We've got one knee bent, and we're standing on the bent foot. And the other knee is bent as well. And just have a couple of breaths here. You could almost slightly bounce a little bit on your bent knee. And just that's it. How is it to balance? And like me, you might fall over and that's fine. Okay, good. That's it. Very nice. Okay, come down, have a little shake out. And then we're going to do all of these things on the other side. I'm turning around. So with your feet being side by side and a little distance between them, step the other foot forwards and come to that rocking forwards and back. So we're repeating everything with the other foot forwards now. So you know where you're going this time. So a few more times, rocking your weight forwards and back. So your weight coming into your front foot, you come onto the ball of your back foot, weight into the back foot onto the heel of the front foot. And then eventually we'll settle down in both feet. So sometimes what I like to do here is have my hands on my pelvis again and a couple of big sighing breaths and just really trying to feel very planted from the waist down, giving the weight of your pelvis and your legs, the bones in your legs down to the floor. And then we can start swinging our arms again. Turning from the waist up, not from the waist down, turning a little bit to the right and to the left. So can your shoulders turn and your head could turn? Yeah, but can you feel really steady from the waist down? So I always feel that there's this sort of point of division in the middle of ourselves. Good. Okay, and then try the little twist movements. Again, maybe just feel where your pelvis is and then hands on your low ribs and just try turning without swinging your hands. So hands can be on your ribs, hands can be on your shoulders, and hands can be on the crown of your head. So again, just how does it feel to turn? Good. Okay. And then release your arms. Come back a couple of times to swinging your arms and turning. And then we'll fold forwards again. So as we did on the other side, bending the front knee, keeping the back leg straight, folding it first of all, so maybe our elbow rests on that bent front thigh, and then we can fold forwards completely, letting the head go, resting down on that bent front leg, having a few breaths there. See if you can still feel your back heel sinking into the ground. So your front knee's bent, your back leg straight, you're letting your head and arms be floppy. And then as you exhale, sinking down into your footprints, coming back up into standing. And again, when you arrive in standing, your front knees bent still, your back legs straight. We'll bring our hands into prayer pose at our breastbone, at our heart. And then shift your weight into your bent front knee. Bend the back knee. So you can just be in this, sort of slightly exaggerated running position. Maybe a little bit of bouncing on your bent front knee. That feels okay for your knee. And have a few breaths here. We will take this balance a little bit further in a moment. Good. Well done. So come down and have a little shake out. We're just going to go into a normal forward bend, and then we'll go a little bit further with some of the elements in this sequence. So bring your feet back so they're side by side, and we'll go into a forward bend like this. So sinking into the heels, exhaling, rolling forwards into a forward bend. Let the head go, let the arms go. Be nice and floppy in your forward bend. And just have a few quiet breaths there, bending your knees as much as you like. That's nice, good. Another breath or two. And then in your own time, you can sink down into your heels and roll back up into standing. Good, and maybe have a little shake out of your legs before we go on. So we're going to take a couple of the elements in the last sequence we did and go a little bit further with them. So if you come back to stepping your first foot forwards, and you could come back to a little bit of shifting your weight forwards and back if you like. So what we're going to do now is add together the forward bend and the twist. And we're going to be bending forward first and then rotating. So you want to organise yourself so your back leg is straight, your front knee's bent. You're folding forwards, but we're trying to keep our spines sort of long and straight rather than letting it flop. And you're bringing either your hands or your forearm to rest on that bent front leg. So what I'm trying to think about here is imagining my spine is parallel with the ground. I'm letting my spine lengthen and flatten. And then I'm taking my back leg hand onto the back of my pelvis. And I'm turning in the direction of the back leg. I'm not turning towards the back leg. I'm turning in that direction. I'm sort of letting the front of my body open and widen. And then you can release your bottom arm. So the arm that's resting on the thigh can release to the floor. And you could just let that arm hang, or you could bring your fingers to your ankle or your shin or even to the floor. So see what you want to do there. And then your hand that's on the back of your pelvis, that arm can come up towards the ceiling. And then we see if we can have a few breaths here. I'm just trying to feel ourselves in this position. So again, there's that sense we're steady from the pelvis down, steady legs, back knee straight, front knee bent. And then we're turning, we're rotating in our upper body. Good. And then if we're starting to get fixed here, we can come out, we can untwist, and then we can flop forwards over that bent front knee and let our head go and just have a couple of quiet breaths. And then as you exhale, sink down into your feet, come back up into standing. Good. And again, keep in this same position. So your front knee's bent, your back leg straight. Bring your hands into prayer pose again at your breastbone. So we're going to come back into that little balance, but go further this time. So we're going to shift our weight into our bent front knee, bend the back leg, and then we're going to start to reach back behind us with the raised leg heel. And as that heel reaches back behind us, we can tilt forwards. We can let our standing knee straighten but not lock. We can have a few breaths here. So again, we're maybe imagining that our spine is parallel with the ground and we're really reaching back behind us with our raised leg heel. So both legs have lengthened out. Very nice. Good. Well done. And as always with these balances, if you have a bit of a wobble, you can come out and you can try again. You don't have to. But if you like, you can just see, oh, what's it like if I try again, I reach back behind me, might have another wobble, It's absolutely, it's fine. Yeah. And in this balance, we're trying to think there's this sort of long line from the crown of our head, so where we had our fingers in that balance, in that twist, the crown of our head to our back heel. That's what we're trying to imagine. Anyway, you might have had enough. Very nice. Enough balancing. Well done. That's good. Good. Before we come on to side 2 of this sequence, I think just come into a normal forward bend. So settle your feet down side by side. Roll down into a forward bend. If you fancy going on into a squat from your forward bend, you could do that if that would be nice for your lower back. And sometimes when we do that, that balance was sort of a warrior 3 variation. Sometimes when we do that, so yes, if you want to go into a squat, you're bending your knees from your forward bend and letting your bottom come down. And sometimes when we raise our leg in that warrior 3 balance, it can lower back can sort of feel it slightly. Okay, let's reverse this movement. So if you're in a squat, start to send your heels down and your sit bones up, come back into a forward bend, and then roll all the way back up into standing and have a little shake out. It seems to have gone very, it's getting dark, isn't it? Dark in my room. Good. So we're going to do the other side. So again, start with your feet, that little little distance apart sideways, feet side by side, and then stepping the other foot forwards and come back to this rocking forwards and back. So as we do this rocking forwards and back, we're just thinking about settling into our feet, but as we settle into our feet, maybe that helps us to calm in our mind. Good. Mind as well as body. The two are the same. Good. So I could be here all day, but eventually we'll settle. I'm going to turn around, so I'm turning towards you. Eventually settle down, and then let your front knee bend. So back leg straight, front knees bent. We're going to do this folding forwards. We're trying to keep our spine long and straight. So either the hands rest on the bent front thigh or your forearms. Have a breath or two here, just imagining that your spine is long and straight. And then bring the back leg hand onto the back of your pelvis. And then we're just, again, trying not to move the pelvis and legs. We're turning in the direction of the back leg, or not towards the back leg, but in that direction. Good. So we're wide in the front of our chest. Good. And then from there, you could release your bottom arm to the floor. The fingertips could touch the floor or the ankle. And your top arm then could come up towards the ceiling if you like. And then see if you can have a couple of breaths here. Can you be steady? Is it possible to be steady? Is it possible to feel wide across the front of the chest? If you've taken your arm up to that ceiling, can the hand be relaxed? Can you wiggle your fingers? Can your palm feel soft? And then when you're ready to come out, we turn, we untwist and we flop over that bent front leg. Give away the head, give away the arms. Just be floppy for a couple of breaths. And then sink into your heels. Come back up into standing. And so again, keep the front knee bent, the back legs long. Bring the hands into prayer pose at your breastbone. So we're going to finish with our little sequence by coming into the balance on this second side. So bring your weight into your bent front leg. And then as we start to draw the raised leg heel back behind us, we also start to straighten our standing leg and tip forwards. So we're imagining this long line from the crown of our head to our back heel. That's what we're imagining. We may or may not find it. And again, yeah, like I said, it's really easy that we sort of topple over. So it might be that we come back to our starting point, our upright starting point, and then start reaching back with that raised leg heel, letting our shoulders tip forwards in response. Can we maybe find a place where we can have a couple of breaths? Maybe, maybe not. Very nice. Good. Yes, and then well done. If you're still playing around with the balance, it's fine. You might want to come down into one more forward bend and a squat. We're nearly finished with things in standing. I just want us to do a little bit of settling in standing. But I think first of all, it's nice, feet side by side, coming down into a forward bend and then on into a squat, letting your knees bend forwards over your feet. Good. Again, you don't have to do the squat, and it's fine if your heels come up. And then we'll move back up into standing. So start to send your heels down and your sit bones up, and then rolling up into standing. Good. A little shake out. So I just thought we would settle in standing for a few breaths, and then we'll come down and we'll do some things on hands and knees. So have a look at, just start the process of settling by looking at your feet and consciously organising your feet a little distance apart, parallel, and then stop looking at your feet. Bring one hand to your belly and one hand to your chest. And then if you're comfortable, you could close your eyes. You don't have to. But when we close our eyes, it does help us to feel and have that sort of inner focus, and just letting yourself settle here. And it might be as you settle in standing, you feel your chest or your belly responding to your breathing. And if it's helpful, you could let yourself sway a little bit from side to side. That's absolutely fine. Just see if you can feel yourself in standing. Let yourself settle. If you prefer to let your arms hang, you could see how it is to let your arms hang. Let your shoulders drop. And if you are swaying a little bit from side to side, maybe it's possible to make that swaying smaller and smaller until you settle down. Perhaps for a moment into a point of stillness. Feeling a breath come in, feeling a breath leave you. Very nice. Now you're probably wondering how we've got so far through a class with no dog pose, and we're going to be coming into dog pose now. So we're going to be coming to the back of our mat. We're going to be going down through one last forward bend, walking forwards into dog pose. And I think actually, yeah, just see how your dog pose feels when you get there. So forward bend, and then walking your hands on into dog pose. And we're going to be doing some more dogs, so you don't have to stay there. But if you come into that dog pose and it feels enjoyable, then stay there for a few breaths. What we're going to be doing from dog is coming down into child, and then we're going to be doing some hands and knees and a bit more dog. But I think when I was practicing earlier, I was surprised when I came into this dog later on in my practice that it felt quite nice, and I was happy to stay there for a bit. So that's it. But yeah, that's nice with the head, Alison. So yeah, any sort of like wiggling the head, letting the head go is good. Yes, that looks nice across the upper back, Kayla. Well done. Lovely. And whenever you're ready, then you're just going to fold down into child pose and let yourself settle in child. So this feeling of coming nearer to the ground once more. And let your elbows rest on the ground, and it may be that your forehead rests on the ground. It doesn't matter whether it does or not. You can, if you want your forehead to touch something, you can always bring your hands under your forehead if it's not touching the ground. And just settle there for a couple of cycles of breath. And in a moment, we're going to do a few wiggly things, a few tail wagging wiggly things on hands and knees that I was finding really helpful because my lower back was very stiff probably a week or so ago. So even if your lower back isn't stiff, then these things can feel quite nice. So from dog pose, and we're going to repeat this a couple of times. We're going to repeat it a couple of times and in this little mini sequence, and then we're going to change the middle of it. So the first thing you're going to do is come onto hands and knees, and you're going to do a few tail wagging movements. So imagining you have a tail and wagging your tail from side to side. And if you like, you could also do the variation where you swing your lower legs from side to side. So that, if you swing your lower legs from side to side, that wags your tail for you. So maybe do a bit with swinging your legs and a bit where you leave your legs behind and you just try and do the same movement with your pelvis. So this imagining you have a tail and you're swishing it or wagging it. It's very nice. Excellent. And then what we're going to do here is come into dog pose again. So you can big hands on the floor, you can tuck your toes under, exhale, come into dog pose. And just whatever you like in dog pose, seeing how dog feels this time, bending your knees, bending one knee. Just thinking about, what can you do in dog pose? And it involves mainly bending knees. What can you do in dog pose to help you feel wider across the back of your shoulders? That's sort of, particularly if we're doing a lot of computer work, that's where we can get very tight between the shoulder blades and the upper back. And from dog pose again, you're going to fold down into child pose. But in this child pose, I'd like you to try and wiggle your pelvis a bit from side to side. So it's a bit like your tail wagging movement, but in child pose. So just see, can you wiggle your pelvis a bit in child pose? Good, it doesn't have to be a huge movement. Try and keep your elbows down. Try not to lift your bottom too much. And then from child pose, you're going to slither forwards onto your belly. And when we're on our belly, it's quite an easy place to wiggle our pelvis. So lie onto your belly, maybe one hand on top of the other, and your cheek or your forehead on the back of your hands, and wiggle your pelvis a bit on your belly. So we can wiggle our pelvis from side to side. And we can also do the little variation where we bend our knees, take the soles of our feet to the ceiling, and tilt our feet from side to side, and that sort of moves our pelvis a bit as well, so that can be quite nice. When you've done that a bit, you could bring your legs back down, you could just wiggle your pelvis a little bit more. And then just think about how you're going to come back onto hands and knees from your belly. So how can you come back from your belly onto hands and knees in a way that's comfortable? It does involve a bit of pressing down into the hands. So it might feel a little bit pressed uppy. So back onto hands and knees, back to wagging your tail again. Come back to imagining you have a tail wagging your tail. So we're just going to repeat the little sequence we've done. So it's a bit of tail wagging on hands and knees. It's coming into dog pose then. And then a bit of wiggling our pelvis in child and on our belly. So when you're ready, from hands and knees, when you've done a bit of tail wagging, you can then tuck your toes under, exhale, come into dog pose for a bit of a lengthen out. Bending your knees as much as you like. Exhaling, big handprints on the floor. And then again, when you, in your own time, you can come fold down into child pose, and you can just see, what's it like in child pose? If you have this intention to try and wiggle your pelvis a bit, how could you do this in child pose? In a way, and the idea is in a way that helps you to settle in child, not in a way that makes child pose less comfortable. So can you wiggle a bit in child pose in a way that helps you to settle and maybe release your lower back? And when you've wiggled a bit in child, you could also have a couple of quiet breaths and just see how your child pose feels. And then from child pose once more, you're going to slither forwards onto your belly, and you're going to do a bit of wiggling your pelvis on your belly and a bit of tilting your legs. So settle on your belly again, have your hands in a comfortable position, maybe making a little pillow for your cheek or your forehead, and then a bit of wiggling your pelvis. Side to side movement of the pelvis, which can be really helpful for releasing tension in the lower back. And then also bending the knees, taking the soles of the feet towards the ceiling, letting your feet and your legs tilt from side to side. Very nice views of most of your feet, not everyone's. That's it. And this is another good way for sort of, yes, just sort of mobilizing everything below the waist. Okay, so perhaps before we come off our fronts, you could just put your legs back on the floor, wiggle your pelvis a bit more. And then we're coming back onto hands and knees, but we're going to do something slightly different this time on hands and knees. So coming onto hands and knees, and you might want to be in a slightly longer hands and knees. So we're coming back to tail wagging, but this time we're going to be wagging our tail to take us into child pose, and also to take us forwards into face up dog, which is why you might want your hands a little bit further forwards. So wagging your tail back into child, swinging your pelvis from side to side forwards into face up dog. And you might want to do this perhaps three times forwards and back. You don't have to do it 3 times, but find this sort of side to side movement of your pelvis. If you arrive in face up dog and it feels comfortable, you could have a cycle of breath there, feeling wide in the front of your chest. Very nice. And when you've done this 3 times, so perhaps from that third face up dog, you might need to go all the way up into dog pose. So tucking your toes under, exhaling, rocking your hips back and up into dog. If you've gone straight from face up dog into dog, it might be a long dog and you might want to walk your feet in a bit. And so I think this is our last dog pose. So just, last dog pose basically. We'll be coming onto our backs in a moment. Last dog pose. Yeah, so see how dog pose feels. See if you can make it as enjoyable as possible by any of those sort of knee bending things, planting the hands, resting through the arms. Very nice, yeah, dog's looking lovely. And then from this dog, one last time, folding down into child pose. Bit of wiggling your pelvis if you like, if it's helpful for you. If it's not helpful, just a bit of quiet settling in child. So we're going to be making our way in a moment, so maybe another breath or 2 in child. We're going to be making our way through lying on our belly one last time to then turning over onto our backs. So it might be, if you want to put on warm things, put on any socks, that you do it before you lie on your belly, or you just have things nearby so you don't have to sort of get up again. So from child pose, that's it. From child pose, one last time, you're going to lie down on your belly. You can, again, bring one hand on top of the other, rest your cheek on your hands or your forehead, come back to wiggling your pelvis. And you can also come back to tilting your feet, from bending your knees, tilting your feet from side to side. So this little sequence of sort of lots of wiggling and tail wagging, I found really helped me a lot when I had this tight lower back. So, it might be something to remember if your lower back, in weeks to come, starts to give you any trouble. Okay, and so we can let our legs come down onto the ground. And then from lying on your belly, you're just going to think about rolling over onto your back, and then you're going to do it. And then just roll over onto your back and settle on your back. for a few breaths. And we're going to do a few simple movements on our back and a little bit of breathing. But yes, I'd like you to arrive on your back and just, yeah, it says arrive. So just see what's it like to be on your back and how do you want to lie when you're on your back. And are there any little movements that you want to do? So it might be, yeah, that's it. If someone's, yeah, was bending, yeah, it might be if your knees are bent and your feet standing on the floor, you want to tilt your knees from side to side. Yes, that's nice, Kayla, folding your knees into your chest. So just trying to be sort of led by your body when you arrive on your back. Good. And I'm going to be suggesting some of some of these things anyway. So yeah, that's nice. Good. And often I find there's that great feeling of just like, oh, isn't this lovely, after been moving to lie down on my back. So yes, lovely, Beata. We're going to be doing some of these things now. So we can all now fold our knees into our chest and do a little bit of rocking from side to side with our knees gathered in towards us. So you can rock a bit from side to side, or you can sort of circle around the back of your pelvis. It's almost a bit like you draw a circle with your knees, one direction and the other. There's various sort of little movements you could do here. You can also take your legs up to the ceiling and shake them out like Beata was doing. And then I thought we could do a little bit of our happy baby rocking, which I know is a bit of a Thursday evening favourite. So that's with your legs up, but bending your knees and taking the knees and the legs quite wide apart. So the soles of your feet are facing the ceiling, that's it. And you either catch your toes, your big toes, or your ankles, or you can hold around the back of your knees. And then rock from side to side. And with our legs in this position, it does something quite nice for the lower back. It really widens out the lower back. And you could also sort of rock yourself from side to side by reaching into one heel and then the other. So you could sort of reach one leg towards the centre, towards the ceiling. That rocks you from side to side. Or you can obviously reach one leg out to the side, but that might rock you all the way over onto the side. That's nice. And whenever you've had enough rocking, you're going to bring your feet down to the floor. Let me just see how we're doing. Okay. So maybe for a moment, lengthen your legs out on the ground and just give your legs a little bit of a roll or bounce your knees. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to just finish settling down with a little bit of breathing. You don't have to keep your legs long. If you're more comfortable with your knees bent, bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And also at this point, if you'd like to put a blanket over you or put on a jumper or just make yourselves more comfortable, then please do, so that you can focus on your breathing without sort of having half your mind focused on the fact that you're not comfortable or warm. So once you're settled down, then bring your hands to rest on your belly, quite low on your belly, so beneath your belly button. And maybe just have a big sighing breath or two to help you settle. So let the breath come in through your nostrils and then big sighing breath out through your mouth. Perhaps one more time. And then just for a few more cycles of breath, settle with feeling the contact of your hands on your belly. So the hands feel the belly and they might feel your belly responding to your breathing. But also the belly feels the warmth and the weight of the hands. And that can be quite comforting and soothing. So feel another cycle of breath move through you with your hands on your belly. And then you're going to slide your hands up your body a bit and out to the side a bit. So your hands are coming to your low front ribs, which is where we had our hands a few times today when we were twisting. And now we're going to focus with our breathing there. So it might be that you have your thumb going around towards the back of your body and the fingers in the front, possibly. That might be the most comfortable way to do it. Just see what's comfortable. Hands on the low ribs, low side ribs. It's the front. And it might be helpful here to take a sort of long, slow, deep breath. So as your breath comes in, you feel your low ribs widen into your hands. And as the breath leaves you, you feel those ribs narrow back around you. And you can then let your breathing relax a little bit, but still see if you can feel that movement of the ribs widening into your hands as the breath comes in, and the ribs narrowing a little as the breath leaves you. But you don't need to actively make your breathing longer. Sometimes I think when our hands are here, we naturally sort of breathe a little bit more deeply, but don't do it in such a way that it brings any strain in. If it feels nice to feel sort of longer, deeper breaths, then you can enjoy that. So maybe one more cycle of breath with the hands here, feeling the ribs widening into your hands as the breath comes in, feeling the ribs narrowing as the breath leaves you. And then the last place we're going to bring our hands is towards the top of the chest, just beneath the collarbones. If we can bring our hands to rest there. And again, this can be a really sort of nice calming place to have the hands. We can feel perhaps this sort of light breath, this gentle rise and fall of the upper part of our chest. It can be really quite sort of quiet. Just letting the breath float in, letting the breath float out. Good. Okay, I'm going to ring the singing bowl in a moment, so you can keep your hands on the upper part of your chest, or you can bring your hands to rest anywhere on the floor, somewhere, one of the other places we've had the hands, just for the last perhaps half a dozen or so cycles of breath. Thank you, everyone. Looks very cozy.